fan? Well, if you said yes to both of those things, then there's a good chance you're probably a little tired of our local Cleveland Brown sports media. Same old thing, day after day, night after night. It's time to hang the cleats up. It's time to pass the torch. If you're looking for something fun, something fresh, something where four people literally smack themselves in the face over and over with hot take after hot take, then my boys at Down with the Browns is where you want to be. It's just good for your soul. Available on Apple Podcast, YouTube, and Twitter. Getting down with the Browns.
And welcome back to another episode of Down with the Browns.
Welcome back.
We have 4 out of the 5 hosts of Down with the Browns today, and a very special guest. Very special. The drippiest dude in all of the land. The Prince of Freshness. Anthony. I don't know your last name, but yeah.
All good. All good. Thank you guys for having me. I'm honored to be on the show, man. We're having some fun. So
let's get it.
Good.
Dude, thanks for hopping on. We took last week off. I got my tooth drilled. I don't know what the rest of the guys did, but we skipped a week and now we're back. Some crap happened, you know. Made a big trade last week.
Gigantic trade. A gigantic trade.
Out of the blue. I don't think anybody saw that one coming except Noah.
Yeah. Noah called his shot about a month ago, and it's just crazy the second that he pulled the receipt, because it seemed a little bit far-fetched kind of at first, because, you know, we thought, hey, there was still some guys that, you know, Andrew Berry could sign through free agency. There was still maybe a couple big names that wanted out, but this trade apparently happened very quickly. Za'darius Smith announced to the Vikings that he wanted out, and all it took was giving away a 2024 fifth and a 2025 fifth, and, you know, we got 2 picks back in, back for it. A 6th and a 7th in 2025. So it's just crazy. Especially, I believe the cap hit is only around what, like $1 to $3 million.
Yeah, something like that. It's insanely low. But they took next year's salary off the contract, right?
Yeah. So it's basically a 1-year rental, but hey,
dog.
Yeah, especially Za'Darius Smith. I still think it's kind of crazy, especially the fact that, you know, this is a guy that was fresh off of back surgery this year. He missed all of 2021 with his back issues. Came back and, you know, put up 70 plus pressures in 2022, and he led the league in pressures in 2019. So Browns fans, get hype for this guy.
I'm hyped, but I got one question, and it's for Mac, because I know he played in the trenches, so he would know the answer to this. I know Za'Darius Smith came into the league more as an outside linebacker, right? Mm-hmm. Playing in that Ravens 3-4 system, right? Mm-hmm. Is there going to be a situation where he may not, or like where he's going to have to learn certain things? Like, I mean, obviously when you're an outside linebacker, you are dropping into coverage every once in a while, or you're going to, rush through the middle or something like that instead of off the edge. So does this present a potential problem, or does this or is this something that makes it even more versatile for something like the Browns?
More versatile. When they signed Okoronkwo, he was a 3-4 edge rusher as well. But when in this Jim Schwartz system, these defensive ends are going to be a little bit farther away from the tackle in that wide 9. But in terms of Za'Darius Smith, this guy can play all over the field. When he led the league in pressures, he was lining up outside of his traditional spot at edge 22% of the time.
Wow.
So they can line this guy up wherever they want on the field. And that's great because they could really only do that with Miles these past couple of years. So, and when you do that, you got to put another guy at that defensive end position, right? But now that you have Miles, Okoronkwo, and Za'Darius Smith, you can take one of those guys. Now it's probably either going to be Miles or Smith there, and put them at a position to where, you know, maybe a team has 2 solid offensive tackles, but they have a weak center or guard. You know, JJ Watt, why he was so good is he used to just go down the line and find an offensive lineman that he could beat off the ball every single play. And then that's where he played the rest of the game at. Right. So, you know, the fact that they have Miles who can do that and shown that year after year, and now they have another guy that can do that, they can exploit all of these matchups. And it's just great to see because
for sure.
The fact that we don't have to ask Miles to do so much and just have him play his game rather than, okay, you know, now we got to line you all the way up over here. Nah, you got to just stay in one spot because it's going to be a liability if we move you from there.
Yeah. So, like, what were your guys' initial reaction when you look at your phone? I'm guessing everybody has Twitter notes on because that's where news breaks first.
Right.
Yeah. So I'll start with you, Anthony. What was your initial reaction to the Za'darius Smith trade?
Oh, I was hyped. Obviously, we had a lot of trouble stopping the run last year. So picking up him and Tomlinson and Double O, I have a hard time pronouncing his name still. But our run defense is going to be so much better, and we need that in the AFC North, especially with Burrow, Pickens, and Lamar Jackson. We're going to need a lot of help on that run defense. So I was super hyped about it. And like it was mentioned earlier, we'd have to spend too much money on it and give up too much for him. So I'm all in on it for sure.
Yeah, for sure. What about you, Zach?
Yeah, that was kind of my thought. The other thought that I had was, I don't know, and this might be a hot take, if we've had as talented of an edge alongside Miles.
We haven't.
Like, because Jadeveon Clowney, I like Jadeveon Clowney, but I don't think he is that guy. You know, I remember playing against Za'Darius Smith when he was in Baltimore, and that dude was a problem. Like, he was blocking passes. I mean, obviously, when you have Baker Mayfield, it's not hard to block a pass. But I mean, yeah. But even like I remember the year that Miles was a rookie, and he was. I mean, Za'Darius Smith is impressive. It'll be interesting to see, you know, how many times they, you know, are they going to use that like crazy thought of like lining Smith and Garrett next to each other? Like, can you imagine that coming off the ball and then Tomlinson? And I'm not even really too worried about the run game. I'm just, for me, the line has never been the problem. I'm always worried more of the back end. We give up so many big plays, and I was more stoked on the Juan Thornhill and the Rodney McLeod deal, but to get to Za'Darius Smith just puts that like, that's like, okay, we're the real deal now. Like, there's no more excuses. We gotta, you know, put up or shut up.
Mac or Manny, when you guys choose.
Let's hear I'll go. I thought that this defense was ready to go. Like, we were heading into the season, and I was comfortable where we were at. I like the draft picks that we got. Dalvin Tomlinson. I wanted Matt Ioannidis, but I was like, you know what? I'm feeling really good. Juan Thornhill coming in. You know, Jim Schwartz, defensive coordinator. I'm feeling fantastic. I'm just ready. I'm ready for those for the Puerto Rico trip offense pictures. I'm waiting for the pass from Deshaun Watson to Elijah Moore, and then in the middle of the night, after I finished dinner, it was like 7:30 or something like that. I just see on Twitter in the DMs, I think it was in our group chat, someone said, "Oh my God." I was like, about what? Like, I'm thinking that's another trade happened with another team. And then I see Za'Darius Smith. I couldn't even, I really thought that this was like some Madden thing. Like, this is a Madden kind of trade.
Well, and what we got him for. I mean,
what we got him for is insane. And so I quickly look up everything I can on if it's real, if it's true, if it's confirmed, if it's from the fake Adam Schefter account, because you know how Elon does the verifications these days. You never know who's who. So you got to make sure it's real. I made sure it's real. I cannot believe it. Couldn't believe it. So what I'm saying right now, though, people are saying we fleeced them, this, that, the other. I had to look on the Vikings side of things, right? So I look at Vikings, some Vikings fan pages, some of their spaces, some of their podcasts, just trying to see what they think about Za'Darius Smith, and they're trashing him, say they hate Za'Darius Smith, this, that, the other. He's going to be a cancer in your locker room. No, he's not. We know what happens in this situation. We had a player who didn't want to be here because of who was throwing him the football in Odell Beckham. And what did we do? We trashed him immediately, right? But everybody, all the 31 other teams loved Odell.
Yeah.
What are you gonna say? So what you're looking at, Za'Darius Smith said before the season started in 2022, he told the front office of the Vikings, I don't want to be here, guys. Seriously. Some fans think it was because he didn't get the C on his chest because Patrick Peterson came over and got a captain, and he came over as well and didn't get a captain, although he was holding the off-season workouts for the defense and everything. And so some people are thinking he was upset about that and think, oh, he's selfish and the other. He didn't want to be with you. But now he's somewhere where he's loved and cared for and cherished. It's for 1 year. But I like that. I like that about this Za'Darius
Back in
Smith.
the AFC North.
Exactly. So don't let anybody tell you that Za'Darius Smith is washed, he's old, and that's what the other teams on this division are saying on the Twitter timelines. If you look very carefully, he's washed. Oh, he's 30-something years old. No. You're scared, and you know it. Joey B's going to be running for his life. He's on a treadmill right now while we're in Puerto Rico. So you pay attention to how the way they're treating us and what they're talking about on the timelines, how they're switching up real quick. But that's okay. That's okay. I love the trade. I love it.
What about you, Mac?
I couldn't believe it. I was out with my now girlfriend at the time, and I had my phone on Do Not Disturb, just having a beer, enjoying a burger, just hanging out in lovely Cleveland, Ohio. And, she gets up for half a second. I glance at my phone and I see 25 messages with our group chat talking about, no way, can't believe this. So I was like, what's going on? I get on Twitter and I can't believe it. And, to what you were saying, Manny, about teams trashing him, I don't want to hear about Za'Darius Smith's injury history, and I don't want to hear about his attitude, because guess what? When a lot of players have back surgery, they don't come back months later for one game and ball out in that one game. So 2021, he has a week 1 back injury, right?
Yep.
Normally for a lot of guys, they shut down their entire season. They're thinking about the future. And he knew that he more than likely was not going to be in Green Bay that next year. But he came back for that playoff game against the 49ers. And he got a sack that game, fresh off of back surgery. Like, you don't see that with a lot of players. And he's a guy that has played in the North his entire career, in Baltimore, in Green Bay, over there in Minnesota. That they're playing in cold games with their division rivals. Mm-hmm. So it is a perfect fit, especially for a 1-year rental, because if it doesn't work out, they paid $3 million and they swapped picks. Mm-hmm. They still have Okoronkwo. They still have Dalvin Tomlinson to pick up some slack and eat some blocks at defensive tackle. They still invested in Isaiah McGuire. So they're not asking Za'Darius Smith to be a superhero here. They're not even asking him to be the clear-cut Robin to Batman that we have on the other side there in Myles Garrett. They're just asking him to win the one-on-one matchups, which he has shown through his entire career. He can easily do that. So I absolutely loved it.
Yeah, I agree. I think I was the most hype out of anybody, any Browns fan could have been, because he did attend a certain university.
Kentucky.
Here we go.
Kentucky.
Here we go.
So, you know how I've been talking about getting cats on the team?
Yeah.
But, when it's Za'Darius Smith, and when I saw that text, or not the text, the notification pop up on my phone, I started running, and I didn't stop. I was running around in the yard. I was calling people, and the first thing that came to mind, we're going to be talking about a Super Bowl. I'm talking Super Bowl.
Oh, my God.
It's Super Bowl, Super Browns, baby. Because you know why? Because nobody's going to be able to stop our D-line next year. Nobody. You can't stop Myles Garrett. You're going to have to send the whole O-line to stop him. Last year we had some scrubs. We had Jadeveon Clowney out there. He didn't want to be out there. We saw him. He was lazy. He got 2 sacks on the season. We're getting some dogs on that defensive line now. No quarterback's safe. You might as well keep the ambulance on the sidelines. Just keep them ready because your quarterback's not going to make it through the game.
Oh, I thought you said you laid off the energy drinks. That's insane.
Well, he said that he
fire.
didn't even have them inject painkillers for him when he got his root canal there. But I think he might be off.
That's beyond me.
I don't even think he was put under.
No, it wasn't.
No,
bro.
I drove 2 hours to have it done, and then drove back.
You drove 2 hours back off of a root canal.
Yeah,
Bro.
When I called you, I had just left, and I was heading back.
Bro, that's insane.
How many bangs did you have?
That is insane.
Do what?
How many
bangs did you have?
None. I told you they
of.
didn't put me under. I was fine. The only time that I was kind of out of it was when I took the medicine later.
Right.
Bro, whatever it was, man, it had the whole room spinning, bro. I don't know what it was, bro. I was laying down. I was like gripping like the couch, and I was like, I don't even like this. So yeah.
Hey,
What do you hear that? Do you hear that? It sounds like a stampede coming in right now. I think it's what the Buffalo heard.
Sir.
While not all Irish stereotypes are true, this weekend I was outside PJ McIntyre's pub at 3 a.m. with my Gaelic football teammates, belting Irish songs in the street. This is Mac with Buffalo Herd. Addressing some personal housekeeping within our podcast, we've initiated drug testing after our own Matty G suggested Nick Chubb should be traded before the 2023 NFL trade deadline. Currently, we're testing for inhalants, narcotics, and hallucinogenics. We are awaiting for Matty G's test results from the lab. Deshaun Watson and the Browns offense made headlines last week after pictures and videos surfaced of their training in Puerto Rico. Many fans in Cleveland had a few immediate questions we are trying to confirm with the team. One being why Amari Cooper was wearing sweatpants in 80-degree weather, and the other being why future free agent Anthony Schwartz attended the event. Lastly, on a very serious note, we at Down with the Browns acknowledge the passing of the greatest player to ever play for the franchise, Jim Brown, as he died at the age of 87. He was a great on and off the field advocate for many black athletes during the civil rights movement. He represented this city and organization well. May he rest in peace. This is Mackle with the Buffalo Herd.
Bro,
Great
Rip
stuff.
Jim Brown. Rip Jim Brown.
The GOAT.
First and foremost, I do have to say that running in sweatpants on the beach in a t-shirt is some of the most nastiest work that I've ever seen.
Yeah.
That made me feel so uncomfortable. Amari Cooper,
He definitely had Air Forces on.
he
Black
definitely
Air
had,
Forces.
and the crazy thing is,
With plain white socks.
Okay.
it was like Louis
ask.
Vuitton satin like pants too. Like what it like I don't know.
Let's ask the drippiest dude in the room. What were your thoughts
Anthony,
on that?
what's your thoughts on that?
I'm rocking some vintage shorts out there, man. I'm not wearing no sweatpants in Puerto Rico. Not at 80 degrees. I got some chicken legs too, so I may not be like struggling like others, but nah, man. 80 degrees, you rocking shorts.
The kneecaps were screaming. They were sweating, bro.
That's kind of an alpha move, dude.
You think so?
Really is an alpha move.
Man,
Everybody else is wearing shorts. He's like, nah, I'm good.
The greenhouse
Well,
effect
Christmas
on the
game.
hamstrings. The greenhouse
I mean,
effect on the hamstrings.
Although, if he is cold in the heat, that could be a problem because then he's going to be freezing during the cold. You know what I mean? Like,
True.
Well, I mean, he did drop that touchdown pass.
True.
He
I
did.
knew it was coming.
He did drop that pass. Christmas Eve.
you know what though? I was watching that. I still watch that back and I look at it and there's like times where I'm like, wow, that's like you got to catch that. But then the other time I'm like, is it just that cold out to where his hands are just numb? Like what? Like how do you like? I'm trying to contextualize it, but at the same time, I don't know. Like
I know some players, right? When they work out, they like it. They kind of like it to be like a boxer, right? How boxers work out in a hoodie and sweatpants, and the sweatpants are tucked in the socks. Yeah. Right, and they kind of like that. They have the hood up, the drawstrings tight. But again,
they're not in Puerto Rico.
They're not in Puerto Rico.
In
They're trying to make weight. That's what boxers
80-degree
do.
weather. So
Amari,
like,
what are you making wait
weather.
for?
I wasn't lying. I Googled it. It was 80 degrees.
80 degrees.
Monday through Friday of last week.
In satin Louis Vuitton sweats. I mean,
That's
Anthony's shaking his head. He's like, no, no.
Well, nothing is more wild than the Joe Q on Christmas Eve game warming up. He had nothing but shorts on outside. I was at that game. I had 5-6 layers out. That thing was outside meditating. And all said, no, bro. There was no way, bro. You're such a savage.
I am moving at all times in those conditions, right? If I have no shirt on and shorts in the cold, I'm moving. As soon as I stand still, everything is frozen. So
Bro,
now I'm going to be moving.
I froze at the Ravens game, man. The week before.
Yeah.
Bro, I was freezing at that one.
So this I don't remember how many years ago this was. It has to be in like 2018, I think. But I went to the Ohio State versus Michigan State game. In the shoe, it was probably -10 out. J.K. Dobbins put up 250 yards with 4 touchdowns and had like this 75-yard run on these dudes. Wow. I was like, this guy is just built different. Like getting cracked in that weather has to hurt. And this dude was like, no, I'm good. Like just keeps running out there. I have no idea.
So did he have like the Zeke crop top?
No, but that would have been legit, dude.
Yeah. And
that would have been like Dave Njoku status. Bro,
for sure. And speaking of Zeke, I mean, where there's a flame.
We're not even talking about Zeke, but I'll tell you what, that is
I brought up the crop top.
Okay, you did.
Yeah. But are we gonna be
listen, let me just put it this way, all right? And this is just I'm not saying that this should happen. I'm not saying it will happen. I'm just saying I could see a situation to where if they don't think Jerome Ford's ready,
Mag is fired up.
They do it. But then again, the way I framed it to somebody on Twitter, all right, and they were like, the guy can't catch the football. All right,
he's cool.
No, let's act quick. Let's act quick.
Football. I said, listen, if you're going to take a risk on signing a free agent running back, right? Because at that point right now with who's left, I mean, you could probably get some more production out of certain guys, and then we also have Jerome Ford, which is the smart way to go forward, is just keep him. But if you are going to take a risk, the reward on the other end is very high with Zeke. Say you get to see him a somewhat of resemblance of him in 2017, 2018, right?
Yeah.
Because he, if he's going to be behind a pretty good offensive line, the Cowboys have had a lot of injuries to that over, his career. And his best production years were when he had a really good offensive line. If you can somehow fix him with with catching the ball, because if you remember at Ohio State and early in his career, this guy was going out to the flat, ball was tossed to him, and he would go. Like, that was just his thing. Now, we're talking about I wouldn't say a miracle, but it would have to be like a high risk, high reward. I would take the risk for it, but it has to be at the right price.
Yeah.
And you have to be sure that Jerome Ford isn't going to say, hold my coat on the sideline, Zeke, let me take this over. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
I think Mac's ready.
I think Mac's ready for his Go ahead, Mac. Go ahead, Mac.
Okay. So just to put it simply, let's describe Ezekiel Elliott in one word, and that would be wash. So you want to talk about a guy that led the league in touches from 2018 to 2021 in terms of rushing attempts and then as well as targets. The Cowboys ran Zeke into the ground, and
Absolutely.
It's not only apparent on tape as he just doesn't have that third gear anymore. He doesn't have that breakaway speed, but his yards per reception over the past 4 years steadily declined. From 7.8 to 5.4.
Yeah.
His total first downs from 4 years ago was cut in half, and his general yards per touch went from 5 yards to 3.9. I mean, there's every single stat in the book that tells you that Zeke is not the player that he once was anymore. And what you need out of running back 2 is you need a guy that can catch, and a guy that can block. Because now I don't agree with the arguments. Obviously, I'm wearing, the Nick Chubb hoodie here. And I die a little bit on the inside every time I see Nick Chubb off the field on third down. But that's neither here nor there.
Absolutely.
But what I hear, of why Nick Chubb is not on the field is because, they're looking for a better blocker. They're looking for a better catch or pass catcher. Sorry. But Zeke can't block, and he's not that athletic specimen that he once was. So I just truly believe he's not going to be worth the price tag. And why not take a flyer on Jerome Ford here?
I'm all for it.
His burst is crazy here. And I really want to see what he can do catching out of the backfield. We don't know because we just haven't seen it. We didn't see it in college. We didn't really see it much in the NFL. But watching him return kicks, that has to translate. His ability for vision, acceleration, and finding holes in the open field, that has to translate as a pass catcher. You know what I mean? It's not like the one thing of where, Anthony Schwartz has that speed. So let's kind of see if he can translate it that, in the return game, because he wasn't even that good of a returner. But Jerome Ford, he's shown us that he has vision. He's shown us that he has the speed. So, why not take a flyer on this guy? And,
I agree.
If the Browns are going to take a risk at one position, why not it be running back too? Worst case scenario, they go into camp here and Jerome Ford is injured or just flat out can't play. They do have a guy like J.D. McKissick who has been a third down running back his entire career. There's tons of guys that can catch that can catch a swing pass out of the backfield and make somebody miss, because that's really all that they need at this point. They need somebody that's not even gonna be taking, maybe 5 carries a game as a change of pace back, but they just need somebody that can block and catch out of the backfield. So, Jerome Ford's already on the roster. We're not paying him flipping anything.
Yeah.
So let's just see. And you can find out in 2 or 3 weeks in camp whether you have or you don't have the guy. And, in terms of running backs, is it really that hard to believe that they can't bring somebody in, give them the rundown of third down plays here and just, plug and play them?
Yeah,
right.
For sure.
So
absolutely. No, that was the argument I think that I definitely saw. It's like, what's the point? He has definitely been ran into the ground. The only difference I was thinking to myself was you have Kevin Stefanski. You put Kevin Stefanski and his background of the Kubiak tree and kind of that Shanahan-y type offense versus a McCarthy where it's spread wide and just go deep type stuff. It's like, okay, well, maybe there could be creative, a coach that if there was a coach in a tree that could fix a player, it's this tree. But if you you make a good point. It's like we saw the vision in the return game with Jerome Ford.
Yeah.
Why give a guy like Zeke, who's probably going to want north of $2.5 million, a year, money, when you could probably repurpose that into like a depth linebacker or something, like a depth corner or something like that, to where it's going to be a little bit more, useful in the long run.
So, man.
Oh, yeah. So here's the thing. First and foremost, I think I'm a little bit negative. I don't know how you are, Anthony, because if you're positive, I would have let you go second or third. But I think Ezekiel Elliott and Kareem Hunt, right? It's you let go of Kareem Hunt because you thought that he lost a step. To me, it's like trading 4 quarters for a dollar bill with a little kid. It's just sexier to have the dollar bill, right? Rather than that change jingling in your pocket.
Yeah.
And so with Kareem Hunt, he's the dollar bill. He's the name that Ohio is very familiar with, right? I think that the Cowboys wouldn't mind sending him over to the AFC. But if we just throw those stats up, because I kind of, out of curiosity, we kind of want to look at these just together. So we'll hide that just so we can show Anthony's face a little bit down there. But the stats are so comparable, but it's almost like they're doubled for the person who has more. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I mean, Zeke with rushing, the attempts, the yards per carry are the exact same. So you figure if Kareem Hunt just got more yards per carry, more attempts, then he would have just as many yards. Longest is 27, 20 plus yard carries is 5. The receiving, Kareem Hunt surprisingly had more. I didn't realize we used him so much in the past compared to Ezekiel Elliott. But if you match them up side by side and kind of look at it, it's like they're almost the same daggone person, except Ezekiel Elliott's a sexier name. And so if he comes in here, if Ezekiel Elliott comes in here, I'm not gonna complain. I'm not against it. I really am not. I'm not gonna be upset if he does. But it'll make me think to myself, well, we could have brought in Kareem, and if you're telling me that they're going to be a little bit of the same price, depending on how much Zeke is, I don't know. I might as well just do it. Does anything really quickly before I pull this slide down? Anything jump out to anybody really quick with the stats? You can't. Is it too small?
Sorry to cut you off, Zach, but
Yeah,
Kareem's better catching out of the backfield, and Kareem's certainly better at blocking. So it's just like what's the point? Like you said.
Yeah.
I think I think you don't really realize, especially when you don't, when you're like a fantasy guy, you know what I mean? Like, how many touchdowns am I going to get?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, who am I taking, Kareem or Zeke? I'm taking Zeke because I know within the 5-yard line, he's getting the ball. Tony Pollard wasn't getting the ball within the 5-yard line. So it's kind of like, if you look at it that way, because I think and that's the thing I think we need to also, I think I have to bring myself down to earth this. I don't think we realize how lucky and gifted we are to have the running back this problem that's not really a problem. I mean, the fact that we got to see a Nick Chubb since he was drafted is,
thank you,
a gift, because you don't see that very often. And I think we forget that it's like we're almost like spoiled on that running back thing. So like when you're like, let's take a look at Zeke, you forget that it's like, well, the production that Nick Chubb is doing is not a typical production for every other team. Yeah. I mean, there aren't many running backs out there that are putting up, back to back 1,000-yard seasons, back to years leading or being a one of the leaders in broken tackles and stuff like that. And then you're just like, well, Kareem Hunt's a boss when it comes to the pass game. But then you compare him to somebody like Zeke, who, for the Cowboys fans, they love that guy. He is a
great pass
a monster, and still could go to another team and be really productive.
Yes.
But when it comes to us, it's like, we don't need another Nick Chubb. We don't need another Kareem Hunt. We need a guy that's going to complement what Nick Chubb doesn't do.
Yeah.
Which is, is definitely not Zeke when it comes down to that. But I keep seeing it everywhere that people are talking about Zeke is between two teams, Browns and something else. And I'm just like, what? Like, what's the if we get him?
It'll be sexy though. The media love it. ESPN.
But we get inside the 5-yard line and they're handing the ball off to Zeke instead of Nick Chubb. I'm fighting somebody straight up. I'm marching down. Okay, I'm marching down to 9th Street and I'm throwing freaking haymakers. It's just, you might as well bring in somebody that's different, like you said.
Right.
Well,
Anthony, what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts? Oh, go ahead. You can finish up.
Kind of like a Jerick McKinnon, like how he was so good for Mahomes and the Chiefs because he gave him another dimension that a lot of teams didn't know how to stop.
Yeah.
So that would definitely be something for sure.
Anthony, what are your thoughts on this about Zeke?
This is a name that I haven't seen in a while, understandably so. But when I say his name, Browns fans, we all smile. Dearness Johnson. I wish we had kept Dearness Johnson.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm happy that he is back home in Florida. I'm happy he got a bag from Jacksonville, and I hope, with the exception of the game against Cleveland, I hope he tears it up. I wish we had kept Dearness Johnson.
Yes. Yep.
I thought he was the perfect complement. The Thunder and the Lightning. Nick Chubb is that Thunder, and he would have been that Lightning. But back to the question, though. I'd rather ride with Jerome Ford than get Ezekiel Elliott. But if we do have to sign another running back, we might as well just re-sign Kareem Hunt. Someone's already familiar with the system. Granted production and all that, but I'd rather stick with someone who's already familiar with the system.
Yep.
And all that. But man, I wish we had kept Dearness Johnson though, man, because I thought that man had something. I'm not saying he would have been an elite running back, but he was a compliment, and that man, he found that hole and he just hit it, man.
Yeah, for sure.
I wish we had kept him. But
And to your point, if we were to bring Kareem Hunt back, I think that he has a good rapport with Nick Chubb. And I mean, obviously, they look like really close friends on the sideline. But the good part about that as well is it won't leave a bad taste in Kareem's mouth about how we treated him because he saw his market value. Mm-hmm. He sees his market value right now. You know what I mean? It's not he's a good running back and then we just kicked him to the curb because he's injured or something like that. Like we just like, test the market. I mean, we kind of did leak that he kind of lost a step. So I don't know if he's mad at us about that. But at the same time, it's like, well, bro, if you thought you would have got more money, then go ahead and get your money. But at least if you come back to Cleveland, give it a shot. See if you can make your mark a little bit more than you did last season. It's going to be harder because we're going to be passing more. Yeah. But the only thing that I'll argue about going to Jerome Ford and just, getting somebody else random is, God forbid, like what we love about Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt is because it saved the wear and tear on Nick Chubb. Mm-hmm. Right. I mean, you didn't have to go so heavily with Chubb like the Derrick Henrys of the world, like the Jonathan Taylors and your Saquons. So we got to be able to, we were able to utilize that unless Jerome Ford turns into a Tony Pollard-esque kind of running back too, where he's a younger guy and he's pretty good. I have a little bit of a fear that if Jerome Ford is just not that guy, we're really just stuck with Nick Chubb then. I mean, and we're going to have to be using him in which, I mean, there might be one running back sets, but like at the same time, it's like he's the only threat in the running back room. So if anybody comes on the field for him, we know that they're not as good. We're not having as much faith in it as we would.
Oh, no, we got to play Nick Chubb more. Oh, that'd be such a terrible thing.
See,
true, but I mean, again, how many years do the answer I had, I want to ask you a question back. How many years do you want Nick Chubb for?
I mean, if you're playing scared, you're never going to win. Okay. And that's kind of been the problem here. Granted, I want to see Nick Chubb play for the rest of my life. That's unrealistic. He's one of my favorite players, and I can argue that he is the greatest runner to ever play this game. And there's just, you could even argue the past couple of years, they've just taken him out of games, keep him fresh. And, are there arguments for it? Yes. But there's sometimes where just, it gets a little dumb because you just, at the end of the day, you want to win a game. And, you go into a season, you think about that season only because you're thinking about that game that you're playing because you want to win week to week. And that's why they say take it one game at a time. Yeah. So that, I mean, that's what I'll say to that. But, with that being said, they still need somebody to spell it. It's going to be great finally because they do have a vertical passing attack now. They do have weapons that can get that.
Why? Because they invested in what, Matt?
They invested in some wide receivers. Yes, some wide receivers.
What was that? Wide receivers, and they listened to me finally.
Yes. So it's going to be really great, especially because Nick Chubb's better running out of shotgun. He always have. I mean, look at the splits. We're talking about like a half-yard difference more, per carry, which is pretty significant when you think about it. So between that, he's going to average probably maybe like 5 or 6 less carries per game. But eventually he's going to need spelled. And for some odd reason, Kevin Stefanski does not like having him on the field on third down. So, they're going to have to find somebody. But again, that somebody just isn't Zeke because Zeke doesn't bring that like something different to the table. They need to bring, somebody like that. Jared McKission's gone. Dearness Johnson's not coming back anytime soon. Hopefully it's Jerome Ford. And I really do think that it is because, I don't think that AB is a liar. The fact that he talked about Jerome Ford's ability to catch the football, it kind of startled everybody, right? Like everybody's like, what are you talking about? Like I've never even I can't even pull up film of this man catching the football. And if anybody's got anything on that, please let me know.
Well,
But
he was and I'm sorry to say this, Christian, but he was a Roll Tide Alabama running back, and then he transferred to Cincinnati because he wasn't getting playing time. I mean, when you're behind Najee Harris, Josh Jacobs, I mean, guys like that, like of course you're not touching the football. But I remember watching one specific game. It was I want to say it was Cincinnati was playing Notre Dame or something like that. It was that weird. It was the lockdown year where it was that weird schedule that everybody was playing. But I remember seeing a specific play where it was almost like there was it's kind of almost like a horseshoe concept where they had two guys in the backfield, two running backs playing next to each other. But I just remember seeing this kid catch the football and go 15 or 20 yards. And I was just like, it wasn't just one of those passes that was like one of those where it's in your chest, like, you're catching it and falling. I mean, this kid grabs it and just finds a hole and goes. Like, it was interesting. Now, that was against Notre Dame. You can argue if they had a good defense or not a great defense or what was going on. But I think we see the fact that the guy – this is going to be like an odd take here, but the fact that the guy can return a football and catch it every single time and not consistently muff it, like EPJ, Anthony Schwartz, God, insert name here for all the guys we tried. Like, the guy was consistently catching the ball and consistently getting us positive yards. Like, that to me is enough to be like, okay, the kid can catch the football. Like, that's arguably one of the it's deceivingly difficult to do to be a really good return player. And I think that's a big part of it. But yeah, it's hard to find film on the kid. It really is. There's not many sources for it.
Yeah, for sure. But going back to the Zeke to Cleveland thing, I'm kind of 50-50 on it. See, I would be down with it. The only thing, if we do get him, the knock there is the expectations the media is going to make for the Browns. They'll look at it, they'll be like, oh, you guys got Deshaun Watson, Amari Cooper, Nick Chubb, Zeke. And they'll start listening like they were back in 2019, like that unrealistic expectation. Like, you guys should win a Super Bowl this year. I know I was just chanting that, but I don't really think that we're going to win the Super Bowl this year. I'm just going to let people know that now. But that's the only thing I think. And I do think we need to get more of a receiver back. But if we do get him, I think it's a smart signing because let's say it gets to week 3, week 4. Nick Chubb tweaks his hammy. He's out a couple weeks. Who do you want being that league back? Would you rather it be Jerome Ford or Ezekiel Elliott?
Oh, that's a good question. That's a very good question. I would love to have
Ford.
So you're talking more of an insurance policy.
Yeah, and
but at that point, to Mac's point, and I can't believe I'm just disproving my point over and over and over again with the Zeke thing. Don't know why I put up a jersey swap now, but you might as well re-sign Kareem Hunt. He knows the system, and he's a little bit more versatile. And we know that he can run. I mean, when the kid's going and when he's healthy, he runs through a truck. I mean, the dude's pretty much the same guy.
I mean, dude that we don't talk about often, he might be on the bubble as far as roster cuts go too, but Demetrius Felton, isn't he kind of supposed to be our kind of hybrid running back wide receiver guy? I haven't seen enough of him.
He was he just doesn't. When we drafted him, I was like, I don't know what he is. I don't know either. Yeah, no. It was a weird thing because everyone's like, "Oh, he's going to play in the slot. He's C-Mac. and I'm like,
that's kind of how he played at UCLA,
right?
With DTR.
Didn't they convert him from running back to wide receiver his last year or something like that, and it just it didn't. I think that if we're talking about an AB miss, that was probably the one of the bigger misses of him. For sure.
Yeah. I know we keep talking about Kareem, but I don't know, man. Last year, I mean, he was giving shots and he just wasn't, doing it. I mean, Zeke, kind of in that same situation. And I mean, I know Zeke got a lot more carries than Kareem did last year, but like he may be like, okay, fresh start. Let's go out here and prove everybody wrong. Let's like put it to the Cowboys. Like maybe he has that kind of like dog in him to go out there and do that and try to prove everybody wrong. But I'm kind of on the fence on it, like 50-50. Like, I mean, I'd be down. I mean, I'd be hot. I'm not gonna lie. I'd probably be running around in the yard doing donuts because I'm just like that about any guy we sign.
Yeah.
So
that'll be interesting.
It would definitely be interesting. We got a comment in here from a user, Manny Maxwell. Manny is still right about the wide receivers.
Oh my, bro, get out of here! Get out of here!
So anyway, so we're gonna move on to our next topic. A quick question for just a quick dialogue. I made up this question a couple of days ago. Threw it on Twitter. I kind of wanted your guys' outlook on this. Do you think that it is possible for Deshaun Watson to break the all-time passing record for the Cleveland Browns? Right now, it's held by Brian Sipe with 23,000 yards. Do you think that, give me all your scenarios, if and but statements, maybe if this happens, but I want to hear everything. I'm kind of curious. This is why it's an open, we've got some mixed views on this question, right? But do you think that Deshaun Watson can break the record? I'll go with Christian first. I'm going to go KFC first.
Yeah,
then we'll go on the screen. Anthony, and then back, and then Zach.
Yeah, I could definitely see it because this offense is going to probably change a little bit because it used to be run kind of first, or they said it was mixed, but we ran the ball a lot. I think it's going to be more pass heavy from now on.
Yes.
Because you don't just go out there and pay that much money for a quarterback and not want him to throw all the time. So, and then we get more weapons this year. We've got a deeper wide receiver core. You got Amari Cooper being the number 1, DPJ the 2, Elijah Moore the 3. That's pretty stout for the top 3. But I could see that him going almost 5,000 this year. So that's 5,000 closer to that. And he's got 4 years counting this year left on his contract.
Yeah.
And I don't think that he's going to leave. I think he's going to do pretty solid and stay the quarterback in Cleveland for a while. And I definitely see him surpassing that.
So you're thinking like 5,000 yards per season for like 4 seasons, and then you're already at 20K. So,
well, he had a couple. I don't know how many he had last year, but like I see him hitting close to 5. I wouldn't say 5+ every year. He might have a season where he goes like MVP top caliber quarterback and goes over that.
That's all you need is one season.
Yeah, I see him going about 4,500, 5,000, somewhere in there. But I could definitely see him surpassing that. And like Andrew Berry did hint at a couple of days ago, he's not done yet. So that could mean another wide receiver.
Anthony, what do you think?
I think it's very possible. Yeah. I just moved to Cleveland. It is damn cold, but I've watched the Browns my whole life. So you can definitely pass in Ohio in November and December, and hopefully January. We got some home field advantage. I believe it's very possible, and I'm rooting for it too. So absolutely.
Mac? It's tough. I hate to be the cynic.
Are we shocked?
You're asking for 6 seasons of 4,000 yards or 5 of 5,000 yards here, at the end of the day, we really have to look at it as now. Is it a strong possibility Deshaun Watson will rebound? Yes. He has all the weapons. He's going to have a full playbook in the offseason. But we still have not seen Deshaun Watson be the Deshaun Watson that he was in a Browns uniform. So there's not really anything that we can cling on to outside of, he did this in Houston. But, he has the season this year that we think that he does. Yeah, he's going to be around for as long as he can walk on his own 2 feet. Because and it's going to be really hard, especially having that kind of long success in Cleveland. We've yet to see it. The closest that we had to a run for a Browns quarterback post 99 was Baker Mayfield. And we don't need to talk about that because we all know how that ended.
Baby.
So, I'm going to say no until we see Deshaun Watson become the Deshaun Watson that he was in Houston. And I'm not saying that it's not possible because really it's all on the table for him this year. He has everything that he could possibly want and need on this team, but he still has to go out and do it. So, until we see that 300-yard, 3 or 4 touchdown game, the minimal interceptions, it's just really hard for me to say, yeah, he'll break the record, because granted, 23,000 yards, it isn't a lot in today's league, but that's got to be sustained success here. So.
Yeah,
played a lot of
100%.
domes too when he was in Houston too. So this cold weather, I don't know how that affects. We haven't seen him.
That's a
cold weather plays an effect. I'm just saying
that's a very good point.
That's
That's a very good point. I mean, you're thinking. I'll put it in perspective a little bit before I head to Zach and get your thoughts, because you talked on Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield played here for 4 years and threw for 14,000 yards. And I'm not saying that he was, he's obviously not the greatest quarterback in the NFL, but I mean, you double that, you're already breaking the record, right? I mean, you if he plays here another 4 years, you could break that. He's at 28. So it's more about longevity that you're here for. I think that's the major question. And I hope I'm not taking anything away from what you're saying, Zach. So I'll let you go, and then I'll.
No, you're right. Yeah, I don't know. I'm very apprehensive to say, he's going to do it, or is it possible? Because, I mean, dude, maybe this is just the typical old Clevelander in me, but people that are good here leave. So, it's not, who's to say that after his, X amount of years he's here, he says, I'm out. Thank you, Cleveland. Bye. Who's to say he doesn't sign again? Who's to say that he comes back and he's a damn good quarterback, but he's not top 3, top 4 like he was in Houston? I mean, there are two things that make me two very specific examples that make me think that this, he is going to come back with a vengeance this year. And
yes.
One thing, and it was kind of like the first time I saw it, it was, I don't know if you guys remember, but the second half of the Washington game last year, when he just he took over the game. I mean, he missed a couple throws in the first half where he was just a little you could tell certain guys were in spots that he wasn't familiar with. He was throwing the ball a little short, a little long. He was kind of doing that all the last couple of games, which, I mean, the guy didn't play football in 2 years. It's going to happen. But there were a couple throws he made, specifically the touchdown, I think, to Amari Cooper against Washington, that I was like, that is a dart. That was just absolutely that's something that Baker Mayfield would have overthrown the guy, or interception to somebody that wasn't even playing or covering that guy. And so for me, it was okay, that was my great example. The other one is maybe I'm a little too optimistic here, but that Ravens game that we won, something about the leadership that he showed in to all those guys, that offensive team, they weren't clicking. He wasn't making all those throws. He made a couple really nice throws, and you were like, oh, okay, this is special. This is something we've never seen before. But there were a couple moments where I saw him just body language. Everybody around him, I watched the team just say, we're winning this football game. Deshaun's guys, I'm taking you to this win. Don't worry about it. We're winning this game. And that is something that I have never seen out of any of the quarterbacks that have played for the Browns. Baker tried that. I think his personality was just a little too much. Deshaun, it was very unspoken. It was don't worry about it. We got this. I've anything that goes wrong, he takes full, it's my fault. Don't worry about it. Let's go. I got you guys next time. And I think that goes a big way with a lot of these guys in the locker room, is they needed, in a really hectic year, a sense of calmness, and he brought that. And the guy who was going around all of that crap and all this stuff and the scandals and all those things, the fact that he could bring calmness to a crazy situation that he's in and the team's in and beat a divisional rival, that to me says everything. Like, he's going to come back, and I have a lot of confidence in it. Whether he gets to that Houston,
Deshaun
5,500 yards a season, I don't know. But if he comes back and he does look better than Baker Mayfield, top 10, I can see it happening for sure. But
I love how you touched on the leadership thing, Zach. I'm going to be honest with you, and I brought this up a couple episodes ago, but you notice the jump in leadership, and it's not just like one of those cheesy things that you see out on the internet. It's a real thing because of the fact that your star quarterback is there for every single OTA. I mean, maybe I'm just thinking things, but like when you see practically almost everyone reports these, non-mandatory workouts, and the fact that it makes a huge difference because, your quarterback, your leader is in the building. He is one of the first guys in, last guys to leave. And, that rubs people in a very positive way. And that's what Cleveland has needed. They've needed that big leader because I don't know how many times, we've been talking in the middle of the season where, they're on a skid and we're talking about leadership, right? And it would get to the point where it would just be flat out just annoying. And it would be that one word that you just never would even want to utter because it would just frustrate you to no end. But Deshaun Watson's leadership, he's taking these guys on these trips to get private workouts in. He's in the building every single, possible time. Like that shows guys that, I'm not above anybody.
Yeah,
I'm
makes
here
a difference.
right with you guys going to war every single day. So I love that point on leadership because it's clear as day that there is a different person in that locker room.
No, and you made a great point because you already see it. But before I give my thoughts on the question, you kind of see it already, even with Aaron Rodgers with the Jets. I mean, this is his first time reporting to off-season workouts in like 7-8 seasons, right? I mean, with the Packers, he just never did it, and it's something when you get drafted to the Packers or you get traded to the Packers or you sign with the Packers. It's like Aaron Rodgers is here. It's Aaron Rodgers, but he doesn't show up to off-season workouts. But now you come in and he goes to the New York Jets, and why does he show up to off-season workouts? Why? It changes everything. It changes the mood. Right? I mean, you almost feel like you have your full team there. It brings a sense of camaraderie around you, and it makes you play harder, in my opinion. Right? I mean, I think players in general are excited to be here in Cleveland. Zach, you touched on a beautiful point already. We were kind of talking about it with Baker Mayfield, and what were you expecting? I think the biggest caveat is if he resigns. If Deshaun Watson resigns with the Cleveland Browns, I think you can definitively say the answer is yes. Right.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a yes. Right. I think 8 seasons, throwing 3,000 yards each season, 8 times 3, 24. That breaks the record. Yeah. 3,000. And to put it in perspective, I'm not trying to bash on Baker Mayfield. Please listen to me carefully. I'm not trying to bash on him, but I'm trying to put it into perspective. The last time Baker Mayfield was here was 2021. He played 14 games. And in 14 games, he threw 3,100 yards.
Yeah.
And we thought that was a bad Baker Mayfield. He didn't play. He sat out. He was injured, torn labrum, all that.
Well, and now you got an extra game on the year too.
And now you got an extra game on the year. He threw 3,000. So I'm talking about: are we going to get the Deshaun from Houston? Are we going to get a lower Deshaun? It doesn't matter. We saw a torn labrum Baker throw for 3,000. I'm pretty sure that a healthy Deshaun for 14 games with more offensive weapons can throw just as much.
Here's something that came to mind as well with you saying that is, what did Jacoby throw last year?
Oh, let's check.
I think the team had total like 4,400 yards.
Yeah, because like I'm saying,
45.
because it's got to be. Yeah, I have to see. Jacoby's got to have thrown at least 332 ish.
I think he had 32,
something like that.
33.
And he threw for 2,608 yards.
Okay, so 2,600.
And he didn't play 6 games. He didn't play 6 games.
He didn't play 6 games, right? So it's not. Yeah, I mean that's not terrible at all. Like that's why I guess And also, from my understanding, is Kevin Stefanski was the offense was very, like the full playbook wasn't open.
Was very
right. It wasn't a here, Jacoby, go out and do your thing. But also, I to bring up the wide receiver aspect too, is I think the Browns front office saw, and Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry obviously are probably the cogs in this whole thing, but they saw the types of players that made Deshaun excel, right?
Yes.
Like you have those,
great point.
like you look at a Brandon Cooks, and they were like, do we really want to go after a Brandon Cooks, or can we bring in Elijah Moore? Like, like this kid that is really underutilized in New Jersey. They want Aaron Rodgers, so they've got to get rid of somebody.
Nasty work by saying New Jersey, by the way.
I mean, it's the truth.
It's the truth.
Listen, dude, my family's from New Jersey, and everybody calls them the New Jersey Jets.
Okay.
I don't know why, but
as they should.
Yeah, but
the stadium's in New Jersey. So.
Yeah,
MetLife's in New Jersey. Yeah,
it's in Jersey. But anyways, like they bring in a guy like Elijah Moore, right? A guy who is going to burn these guys and just get behind the defense and cause teams to kind of pick and choose a little bit. Then you have an Amari Cooper, who I'm not saying is anywhere close to as good as DeAndre Hopkins, but they have a similar skill set. They're the guy that you can throw the 50-50 ball up, and he's going to come down with it a lot. Or you have DPJ, I guess you could throw on that. And then they have the tight ends. And Deshaun's tight ends that year, that the 2020 year when we went to the playoffs, I remember we played them. And one of his touchdown passes was to Jordan Akins.
Right.
And every year Deshaun was in the league, his favorite wide receiver within 10 yards was his tight ends. Yeah. So the fact that we have an Njoku, I mean, I don't know if Harrison Bryant's going to pop out or not, but you have Akins.
I think we get another tight end.
Could. But we have the makeup of those Houston teams on offense.
Yep.
But we add another dimension. Probably at least a top 5, top 10 offensive line when it's all said and done. And you have a running game that Deshaun's never had. Like, I think the best running game he had was the year that it wasn't David Johnson. It was what's his name? No, it wasn't Arian Foster. It was the kid. It was the guy right after Arian Foster. It was like a dual threat back. There were two of them, and they were like leading the league. I know Baker played them. We lost, but it was Baker's rookie year, and he threw like 4 interceptions that game. I think if you remember that, it was those two backs, and that's the best they had. Which they
Carlos
were good.
Hyde.
Carlos Hyde was one, and then there was another one, but like that's the best he.
I thought we had Carlos Hyde his rookie year.
No, I'm thinking
traded him.
But we traded him to Jacksonville, though.
Yeah, but I'm talking about the Texans that year, the Baker's rookie year. I don't know who they had. There were 2 guys. I want to say one of them was Marlon Mack, but I might be wrong, so don't. But the point is there were 2 guys that were kind of like Ramondre Stevenson, underrated, and that was it. But this is the best offensive set that Deshaun has to play with. Like
Lamar Miller, that's who it was.
Lamar Miller. There you go. Yeah, and that was. It's just good. It's an interesting thing I noticed is like they're going after the guys that Deshaun's used to having.
Yeah.
Will Fuller, all those guys.
You're getting replicas of them almost, or younger, or cheaper deals. Yeah.
I mean, honestly, if Elijah Moore, just off of his basic skill set, projection wise, is going to be better than Brandon Cooks.
Yes. By the way, if you have some Jets fans who are honest and ask them truthfully how they feel about Elijah Moore, they like Elijah Moore a lot. They liked him a lot. So don't let them also say another thing is like, oh, he's a cancer in the locker room. No, he hated Zach Wilson. That's why he's here. Okay, so it's not like he's a cancer in the locker room. He's not. So as we're winding down the show here, we're going to give one quick question. Obviously, we have one last question here. So obviously the Browns schedule came out, but we are going to dissect the heck out of that. We're going to have so much fun next show. because obviously that's what we do. I mean, it's the only thing really to do in this downtime here.
Yeah.
So we're definitely going to get into that schedule, strength of schedule, how we're going to do, first 4 games, week 5 bye. I mean, what the heck? But anyway, so there were some ideas with the NBA draft being one of the NBA draft lottery being one of the highest watched lotteries in a very recent memory. A lot of ideas were floating around about an NFL draft lottery. So I kind of quickly want to give you guys some quick dialogue, some quick answers. We'll go the reverse order. We'll go real quick, Zach. We'll go Mac, and then Anthony, and then finish off Christian about what your thoughts are on an NFL draft lottery. What that would look like if it's basically ping pong balls for the top 3 worst teams division in the league. Worst team doesn't officially win that. Might not win that. So what do you think, Zach? You're shaking your head no.
Nope. I'm against it 100%. And the reason, listen, like if you wanted to talk about like other sports, basketball, hockey, which is, like I love hockey. It's my second favorite sport, but those they work. Like it just works that way because when you have a team that's made up of 15 guys, you're playing 82 games, right?
Yep.
And for hockey, it's multiple lines, but similar-ish type thing. But they're both playing 82 games.
Yep.
If you're a team that like halfway through the season just decides, you know what, we suck, we're just going to tank. That's been a problem in a lot of these leagues. Now, the NFL, it's kind of a little bit more nuanced, right? Like when you have teams like Miami, who's tank for Tua type stuff, or like, teams that I guess there was that whole scandal about certain teams were like paying their coaches not to win or something like that. That I think can be handled in a different way. But the lottery system, just using the hockey lottery this year, doesn't work for like multiple reasons. One, when a team is genuinely bad, and it could be, the Columbus Blue Jackets, for instance, right? They were genuinely bad because of injuries. They had 15 of their guys injured all season that were their top players, some of their top line guys. So they were unable to really compete. But these younger kids that they had there were competing, and they were still winning some games, still doing certain things. But then you have 2 other teams, Anaheim, who has a lot of young players. They're just underperforming. And then you have a team in Chicago who halfway through the season was like, oh, we have a shot at Connor Bedard, who's the greatest, could be the greatest hockey player prospect we've ever seen.
Yeah.
Well, guess who gets the pick is the team that halfway through the season decided to just stop playing in Chicago.
Right.
And they get the number 1 overall pick when they're not even the ones that's worse. Like they're not worse off. Like Anaheim and Columbus need that. Like they need a guy to get back in there. So you're just going to have this recycling of the same 4 or 5 teams every year getting in the lottery if you don't have a system where, it is like, the worst team gets the first pick, because most of the time that first overall pick is the start of, rebuilding a franchise. You're not just getting here's the 3rd overall pick. Here's the 2nd overall pick. Here's the 3rd overall pick. And then you just keep recycling potential guys that, are draft busts, because if it's a weak draft pool one year, your 3rd overall pick could be a mediocre player and not a star. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but you don't have a high percent. The worse you are, though, you have a higher probability of getting a higher draft.
That probability, though, is still the same. It's the same thing with hockey and baseball or in basketball. It doesn't mean you're getting the 1st overall pick.
No.
Like Chicago had the 3rd or the 4th best chance, and they got the number 1 pick.
Yeah.
There's just a lot of nuance that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And with the NFL, it's set.
Yes.
And most of the time, that number 1 overall pick does not let me. Hell, we had Baker Mayfield as our 1st overall pick.
Yeah.
5 years later, he's not even on the team.
Yeah.
If you draft well, you're going to set yourself up for success. Lamar Jackson drafted last in the 1st round, and he's an MVP. If you draft well, you're going to set yourself up for success. And I think the NFL's been doing a great job with doing that. I don't think we should
throw that away.
Yeah.
Mac, what are your thoughts on an NFL draft lottery?
I want it. I want it, and I want it now. I'm tired of rewarding teams that just give up halfway through the season. I don't know how many times I flip on the TV and I just want to shut it immediately off weeks 15 through 17
because
it's
just
the turd
tanking.
Yeah. It's just the turd bowl. I mean, you want to talk about the Jacksonville Jaguars? The only reason why they have Trevor Lawrence is they quit playing after week 1. They won one game, and they're like, oh, yeah, no, we can't do that anymore. And so we're just going to send everybody home. Now, you want to talk about drafting well? Patrick Mahomes, he wasn't a first overall pick. Lamar Jackson was not a first overall pick.
Right.
Justin Herbert was not a first overall pick. You could still get guys within the top 5 that can change your franchise. And if your whole idea going into a season after 3 or 4 weeks is that you're going to give up halfway through, first of all, it's a middle finger to the game. It's a middle finger to your fans, and it's a middle finger to the whole league because it's just like you're just going to give up. That's what you want. It's the same argument that I gave when the NFL announced that they were no longer going to do 2 buys, they were only going to do 1. They need to motivate these teams to play like their best and get the best product on the field because nobody wants to, and that's why they changed the whole thing with Thursday night games and they want to flex games because, we don't want to put a bad product out there on the field because nobody wants to watch that. I mean, hell, when it was 2017, it was painful watching some of those games because you knew damn well before kickoff they didn't have a chance. And who wants that?
Right.
So you might as well just make something competitive. And like there's teams that go into the season and they know for a fact that they're not going to be competitive.
Yeah.
There's a strong chance where Jim Irsay had a conversation with their new head coach Shane Steichen. I think I'm saying it right. So they picked up their new quarterback is going to be Anthony Richardson, who is one of the most boom bust players that we've ever seen come out of the draft. Solid chance that they're not going for gold this year.
Yeah.
And that's their plan going into the season.
Yeah.
What's it going to look like come week 5? So, you might as well put it in a system to where it doesn't 100% reward somebody just for flat out tanking because it's just if you are good at your job and you're a good NFL GM, you can make it work. You can accumulate some picks and no matter where you're picking, you can still build your roster. You can go into free agency and you can work good contracts and you can add good players. You don't need the first overall pick to completely change the franchise. I mean, the Chiefs did it with Patrick Mahomes.
You're so right.
The Chargers did it with the 5th pick. So, and then you have teams like the Rams that are giving away draft picks, to accumulate guys. So, to say that a team like it's kind of because especially like, these players, they don't want to go out there and lose. Because if they lose, they're not gonna like even if they are dumped by their bad team after the season. If they played bad and they show that they can't win, who's gonna pick them up, right? So you have players that want to play and that want to win. So why not have organizations 1 through 32 that want to go out and they want to win every single year? I mean, like the tanking is just gross to see. It's flat out disgusting. So, anything that could now would the NFL draft lottery definitely shake some things up? Would it piss some people off? Would I be upset in 2017 watching a team, lose all 16 games, not even get the first overall pick? Yeah, I'd be pissed. Yeah. But also at the same time, you can't tell me that they weren't in a couple of those games and they could have won a game, So
that's true, and to your point, which you made a really good point. I do like it. It's weird because you see the Houston Texans basically fired Lovie Smith because of him purposely winning the game. Like he won his game, the last game versus the Indianapolis Colts and lost them the first overall pick, which goes to show you, by the way, that if you just change some scheme and coaching, you could actually win games. And if that's the case, then you could definitely do it to lose games. And who wants that? That's a good point. If the people or coaches are purposely being told to lose games, it's just I don't
know. I think that I sorry to cut you off, but I think because as much as I agree, I also am thinking to myself, I don't think any of it, because even with the leagues that have the lotteries, it doesn't de-incentivize tanking. These teams are still doing it. So the question I don't think should be thoughts on a draft lottery. What's the real question should be, how do you stop tanking?
To your point, Zach, actually, to your point, there's multiple teams that actually tank. Like in the NBA, the Spurs and the Rockets,
right?
Like you get more people trying to tank because
Orlando
it's only
did it for 2 years in a row.
Well, it makes the trade deadline more interesting too, because you'll see who the teams are that are trying to buy and who are selling.
True. This is a good discussion. Go ahead, Anthony. What are your thoughts?
Oh, I was going to say before I jump into my thought, I was listening to Adrian Wojnarowski this a couple months ago when they were discussing expansion teams. And they said, I don't know if it was like actually at a meeting or maybe it was just an idea that was brought up, but at least with the NBA, because you can kind of do this better. They were talking about the best way to incentivize not tanking is to adopt the European soccer motto, where the bottom two teams in the NBA get moved down and the top two of the G League teams get moved up. Can you do that in the NFL? No. I mean, at least not right now. But at least for the NBA, that'd be one way to incentivize it. But to the question, I'm all for the NFL draft lottery. I think the difference between the NBA and MLB is that although there are unanimous number one picks in the NFL draft, most teams in the NFL draft will draft for their top need, not so much for like who the top prospect is. So let's say 2017, if the top guy, if Mel Kiper says this left tackle XYZ, if we were to have Joe Thomas, we're not going to like get that other left tackle unless we believe we can get into a right tackle. So you still have the opportunity to like take that number one pick, move it around, but also just for ratings. Imagine the ratings for the NFL if they do a 30-minute, hour-long draft show just like the NBA does. How many people tune in just to watch lottery balls and the GMs, former players, whatever? It also makes money for the NFL. And I agree with the previous statement. Like, I am so tired of the tanking. It is so oblivious and so disgusting. I am all for it. That's just me, though.
Yeah. And I think you kind of touched on the same point. Excuse me if it's not what your point was, but another thing, what is also different, even doesn't matter if it's a lottery or not a lottery. The NFL is different than the NBA and the NHL, right? I mean, there's 6 players on the ice for the NHL and 5 on basketball. Like it's bad. NBA is positionless, right? But when it comes to the NFL, if you get the number 1 overall pick and you have same like the Cardinals, I think they were picking 2 or 3 overall. They don't need a freaking quarterback. They have Kyler Murray. Yeah. So it's like if you're the number 1 overall pick and you're the worst, team in the league, but you have your QB, chances are you're not going to get a QB, even if there is one that's really that. You know what I mean? So it's like it depends on, because positions matter a lot. It depends on what you need. So I guess it doesn't really truthfully affect like it would in NBA, where it's like, we don't care what position Victor Wembanyama plays. We are getting Victor, right? I mean, like it doesn't matter what LeBron James plays. We're getting LeBron James. You get what you need. But in the NFL, you kind of it's just different. It just depending on what the team needs. But KFC, I want to hear your point, your thoughts on the NFL draft before we wrap up.
Yeah, I'm game for it. Like Mac and Anthony said, like it cuts down on the tanking. I'm tired of seeing that. Makes football even better. Just throughout the whole season. The trade deadline, like I said, would be so interesting because you get to see teams mid-season selling more than they already are. You'll see more of that, kind of like how the NBA trade deadline is, like how it's so fascinating. Like you get to see all these big pieces get moved, and so I think it'd make that be even better. But I think that they should do the lottery just different. Instead of doing all 7 rounds, like if you get that first pick, you get to keep it for each round. I think they should just do it for the first. And then in the second round, it starts back with who had the worst record. Just keep that.
That might not be a bad idea.
That might be a good idea.
Might not be a bad idea.
But just even thinking about it now, it might actually make more sense to do it in the NFL than in other sports. To keep the lottery, because the NFL is the only, I think, game, only sport I can think of that really is positionless. like isn't positionless.
Yes.
That's what
yes,
I like.
Yes.
So, if we didn't need a quarterback at 1, like we could trade that pick, or there's I mean, hell, the Panthers and the Bears
Draft day trades would be crazy.
So I guess
Absolutely.
it almost makes more sense in the NFL, but
Yeah.
than any other one, because in the NHL or the NBA, I mean, it's best player available is who you're drafting.
When Jack
Like, I know-
Hughes went to the Devils,
Yeah. I mean, people are going to draft whoever's there at number 1. If they're the best player in the draft, they're going number 1. And it's not really how it works in the NFL unless you're the Cardinals that 1 year with Josh Rosen and then you take Kyler Murray. But the point is like the majority of the time, I think that it would cut down. But before we do sign off, I think I want to ponder everybody a question real quick, and it can be summed up.
Sure.
What do you, just off the top of your head, how do we stop tanking?
Like in the NFL?
Sure, in the NFL, while we're on the top, since we're doing the draft, but it could be anything. How do you stop it? That's the question.
That's going to be hard. How do you?
I mean, it's unrealistic, but how Anthony said it, I mean, you got to move the team. Because that's really
no.
That's the only way you can really do it. I mean, they do it in European soccer. The bottom 2 teams get out of the League 1 or whatever. I don't follow soccer, so forgive me if I don't. But Adrian Wojnarowski on one of his podcasts really said that is what the NBA has contemplated, because they have a good supplemental league/system. The NFL doesn't really have that. What do you got? You have Canadian Football League, the XFL.
I just came up with an idea. What if you're tanking, right? You lose your first round pick. It's kind of like in baseball. Well, right, but it's like in baseball. Yeah, well, right. If you're losing picks for breaking rules, you should lose picks for also purposely losing.
Well, I've got another thing. Instead, that point of the moving the team, instead of moving the actual team, you move the players and the staff. So it doesn't hurt the actual players in the team; it hurts the owner. So he would be more apt to be like, "No, we're not tanking."
Move the team, but take the roster and just put it on that XFL.
Yeah, just don't move the actual team, not have the Shanghai Sharks or something like that. And you just swap the rosters.
All called contracts with the team are terminated, making every player on that team a free agent.
Yeah. The only pushback that I give for any idea of an answer, and I hate to be that person trying to block every answer with one blanket statement, but it's you need to have a surefire way to prove that these teams are in fact emphatically tanking, right? I mean, it's hard. It's hard. It is very, very hard because
they had Clueless Jackson in Cleveland.
Yes,
Clueless.
It is hard because sometimes
we couldn't even prove with him. Yeah,
people draft. Imagine drafting Chosen Rosen and saying, "Man, Josh Rosen is definitely How do you prove that somebody's a bad player? You know what I mean? How do you prove that a team is just? I mean, we can do it from the eyeball test as fans. We look at Houston with Texans. We're like, man, they're a bad football team, guys. But it's Chicago.
They're in a lot of games. Yeah, I mean,
they're in a lot of games.
Right,
Chicago was in a lot of games. Houston was in a lot of games. So it's hard in the NFL to. You better be. If I'm a fan of the Browns, you better prove to me that my 0-16 Browns were 100% just throwing the towel every single game before you take all my star players. Which star players do we have? But all my star players and set them somewhere, right? You better be right. So that's the only.
Well, this just kind of came to my head. I think this just kind of came to my head, and maybe it's ass backwards thinking, and forgive me if it is, but maybe the team as far as the lottery goes, the team that has the better record just has a higher percentage. So everyone's going to be trying to fight to try to stay in the competitive range rather than trying to go 0-16. The team that goes, 6-11 or whatever. They have a higher percentage. Having a higher percentage is not a guarantee you're getting number one pick.
It's a higher percentage.
What you could do is open it because the whole thing of it being a lottery is they also isn't it only the first 10 picks or something like that?
First 14 picks.
All
of the teams that didn't make the playoffs.
Yeah. Why not open it up to 32? because then you actually have the chance of the Super Bowl winning team to get the number one pick.
Make it small, but yeah.
Wait, but hold on. Well, that's how you stop it, because then people aren't going to sit there and be like, wow, you know what? We're the worst team in the league. We're just going to tank, but there's still a chance that the Chiefs can win the lottery.
That is a very slippery slope, because the one thing about across all professional leagues, what they try to do is keep the product relevant for each fan base. And every single year, you can keep all of those teams. You see this kind of a fluctuating thing for most teams in the NFL. They kind of have a fluctuating pattern where they're good, they're bad, they're good, they're bad. And the reason is because you get to re-up. You're guaranteed for those worst teams in your division, in your league, to re-up and get better. And I would hate to see Kansas City just keep,
but then years. I'm just saying, well, first of all, the percentage would be so small that the likelihood of it happening is true. It would be like 0.5% if you were to divvy it up.
There's a chance.
But there's a chance. It's still the fact that it's like it's introducing stress and anxiety for somebody that it's probably not going to happen, but it's still the anxiety and stress of like, wow, the Patriots just got another number one pick and they have Tom Brady. Like, can you imagine that's what I'm saying is then teams are going to be like, God, we better get good so that we don't have to worry about who the hell is drafting who, because, maybe it's the top 22 team, 21 team.
I'll do that.
Fine, whatever you want, because some teams could have just a down year from injuries.
Yeah.
And then if they get that number one pick, then it's like, all right, guys, we're open for business.
We're open for business. And that's something.
Who wants to trade?
It's something that the Golden State Warriors did a little bit when they had Steph Curry and Klay Thompson injured, and that's why they got James Wiseman. So because, you know what I mean, they were just injured that whole year, but then they re-upped. But I would hate to see Pittsburgh get like CJ Stroud. You know what I'm saying? I would also
but what it does is it makes your owner and your general manager and everybody be accountable. You can't draft poorly. If you draft poorly, your job is gone. If you can't develop your players, you're done. Like, that's just what it is.
Yeah.
And you're holding people accountable. That's just what it is.
And to MC's question, is there any team that purposely tanked and benefited from it? Jacksonville. Jacksonville was the number one team that comes to mind. I mean, Trevor Lawrence.
I would say the Lions.
Well, Lions is a little different just because they have a lot of pieces.
But they had the Matt Stafford, even the Matt Stafford years, like those years with him, they sucked. Like, they weren't good. Like,
but did it result to this though? Did it result to like now? All those new players that they have is like Jameson Williams. I mean, that's recent, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Well, technically, if you look at like the tanking or just the lottery in general, you look at the NBA. You look at a team like the Knicks.
Yeah,
they're constantly in the lottery every year.
Yeah.
And suck every year. This is the first time we've ever seen the Knicks go to I've seen the Knicks go to like the second round of the playoffs.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, that was just a segue.
No, but that's
it just popped in my head. Yeah,
no, that's a good point. But to be fair, they haven't had the first overall pick in forever. Like they you know what I mean? So like they have a choice of a guy.
Yeah.
So it's like it's if you're always third or fourth or whatever, it's like, Eric Turner says $100,000 fine each game if they're feeling. But again, that goes back to my question.
You got to prove it.
You got to prove it. And these teams are losing by 3 points, 8 points. It's like you can go 0-16. I don't know our average point loss the year we went 0-16, but I'm curious to see how much were we losing by. We weren't getting blown out.
No, I mean pretty much every game except like probably 2 or 3 were like right down to the wire. So
yeah, I remember that Green Bay game that broke my heart.
Yeah. So if you're about to score and then you knee it at the 2 to let the clock run out in the fourth quarter, you're getting a fine. You know what I mean? But no one's going to make it that egregiously obvious.
I'm looking up
the average point. It's a beautiful discussion. I thank you so much, Zach, for bringing it up, because it's a very good discussion. How do you stop a team from tanking, but then at the same time making sure whatever you put in place can be proven without a doubt?
I've got an idea. Hear me out.
Go ahead.
Oh, God.
We take the team and the roster, and you force them to become Amish for the whole year till the next season. Who wants to go from living that life to go and be an Amish?
I'm gone. No.
That's what you want, Bucks. That's what you want. But that's a good point. Listen. Again. Whatever ramifications you decide to put in place, I'm all for it. But as
you got to prove it.
You better prove it to me that my football team was purposefully tanking. Because at least that's a benefit for the fan. Because if you're a fan and you're like, no, my team is definitely tanking, at least you can say to yourself, well, at least we get the first overall pick. You know what I mean?
Yep.
You know,
Yeah,
Eric
true.
says, or take the number 1 and 2 picks away. We did talk about that, Eric. We did talk about taking away your picks, which I think I like that. I like that idea. But again, it goes back to the question.
They aren't allowed to wear cleats the next year.
They're not allowed to wear cleats.
Okay, that's a safety thing. That's
more of a safety.
Then don't lose. Don't tank. Don't cheat.
Honestly, but listen, guys, this has been a fantastic show. Yes, please follow us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter,
Instagram,
YouTube,
and the merch. Don't forget the merch.
We have tons of merch. It's Chub Time hoodie. It's fantastic soft merch. Please check us out on Twitter. Anthony, thank you so much for stopping by. You've been so amazing. Great insight, great drip. Please follow Anthony on all of his socials. It is at AntDogVintage on Twitter, I do believe. Anthony, any final words before we close out here?
First off, go Browns, man. That's always, like I say every time, go Browns. Thank you guys for having me, man. Christian, I met you prior, before the podcast. Manny and the other gentleman, I'm sorry, you guys. I'm still new to everybody, but thank all you guys for having me on. If you guys ever want me back on the podcast, please hit me up. I'd be honored to be back on here again. So
absolutely,
thank you guys so much.
Yeah.
I had a great time.
Heck yeah. And go Browns.
Go Browns.
Go Browns. Yes, sir.